Hold on. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Christina Bartleson, she, her. I am a member of University Friends Meeting in Seattle. I'm also a member of the Working Group on Addressing Harm with Care from NPYM, North Pacific Yearly Meeting, which is responsible for putting on this Diversity 101 series now in its second year. Links to last year's sessions are on the group's resource page, as well as February's session entitled Promoting Anti-Racism in Quaker Settings. And it should all be in the handout that you received from me by email. Please let me know in the chat if you did not receive that. I have a few logistical items in the chat for those who are just arriving. I'm excited to see so many new faces and look forward to getting to know a little bit more about you all. We will go around with brief introductions so that we may have an idea of what brings us each here today to this conversation. This is planned as a conversation, not a presentation, so I'm hoping that everyone gets the opportunity to voice and be heard and have their questions answered. I am by no means an expert on neurodiversity, apart from being a mom in a family with several aspects ranging from ADHD, autism, anxiety, and sensory processing difficulties, diagnosed and undiagnosed. I currently work at the Herring Center for Inclusion, which is part of the University of Washington's College of Education and is an inclusive early learning and teaching center for children birth to 6. That is my introduction. If each of you would do the same, we can each call on the next person to introduce themselves. And as we get towards the end of this section, feel free to raise your hand if you've not yet been called on. So I will call on Susan.
Who should be able to unmute a lot more easily than that, but I'm just doing so many different roles. I'm Susan Cousins. I'm from Eastside Meeting. I'm another member of the Working Group on Addressing Harm with Care. And I will be departing before the end of the meeting, but it will keep recording. And so I will listen to the end of the recording. It's wonderful to see you all here. And I can say that I have had regrets from a few people who registered because they really want the information, but are actually not going to be able to participate this morning. So we will be making the recording available through the NPYM YouTube channel, as with the other sessions. So welcome to everyone. And I will call on Rick Ells. Rick, do you want to introduce yourself? No, Rick does not want to introduce himself, or else he can't hear me. Can everybody else hear me? Okay, how about Theo?
You're on mute. She knows.
Theo, you're on mute. Hope this is not a generic problem. But let's see. A number of you can actually hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, there's
Okay.
Theo.
All
All
right.
right.
I was getting
Thank
some
you.
weird message about a profile, but that's because I tried to change my profile to include my meeting and my preferred pronouns. I'm not going to do that anymore so I don't get messed up. Anyway, Theo Mace, I'm a member of South Seattle Friends Meeting. I'm also in the group Addressing Harm with Care. She, her pronouns. I'm here to listen and learn. Looks like there's a good group, and I'll pass it on to Rick. Do you want to try again? Rick?
Yeah.
There you go.
Um, I'm Rick Ells, member of UFM, and part of my interest is for more than a decade, I was a foster parent dealing with some troubled young people and getting a lot of training to do that. Now I'm retired and um, primarily focusing on climate change, which actually has a lot to do with human beings. So, Ginny.
Hello, friends. I'm from South Seattle Friends Meeting. Pretty new. I just had my first year Quakerversary a couple months ago. And I don't believe I have any neurodiverse people in my immediate family, but I certainly am pretty sure we do in our meeting. So if there's any more sensitivity and grace that I can interact with them, I will be grateful to learn.
Who would you like to pass it
Okay.
on to?
Yeah, I just remembered. How about Libby?
Morning, I'm Libby Malamfi. I haven't been to a meeting in a very, very, very long time. But when I did, I was attending South Seattle Friends meeting, and prior to that, I actually attended University Friends for a while. That was a long time ago, over a decade. And I haven't been to a meeting partially because I want to spend more time with my kids who both have ADHD and anxiety just like I myself do. And my husband was recently diagnosed as well with ADHD. So, and I'm pretty sure one of our dogs has it too. So, we we have a very, very interesting family. I'm also at my work. I'm the co-chair of our employee neurodivergent and learning differences employee affinity group. So, and I've done a lot of trainings for myself to learn about ADHD. And so I guess I'm just here to keep learning and maybe represent some of those different aspects of myself. I guess I'm gonna pass it on to Alexander.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I am a member of Palouse Clearwater Meeting. That's the new name for Pullman Moscow. And let's see. I'm undiagnosed, but I'm probably somewhere around slightly or maybe not autistic, on that borderline. And I'm a professor, and I run into students with various interesting differences, and I'm also here to mostly hear from other people. Who hasn't gone yet? I'll have Gail next.
Wrong click. Okay. I'm Gail Sanford, she, her, member of Multnomah Friends Meeting in Portland. Volunteer at our lunch program. And we have a spectrum of people attending, guests at the lunch program, as well as at meeting. And so I'm here to see what I can learn. Thank you all. And let me choose, let's see, Renee. Is that the right pronunciation?
That's right. Thank you. I'm Renee Hansen, University Friends Meeting. I was torn between two sessions. There's a Quaker Earth Care Witness session right now too, and I'm very involved with that. But I thought this would be a smaller group, so I decided to up the numbers here instead. It's hard to make these kinds of decisions. I taught for my career at Minneapolis College, downtown Minneapolis in Minnesota, which means that I know a lot of neurodivergent people. I also have many in my extended family and in my home community. I don't think it's a new thing. It's a new thing that people talk about it, but it's not a new thing. So I'm here mostly to listen. And I will call on Verna.
Hi, friends. I'm Verna Lilly from Tacoma Friends Meeting, she, her pronouns. I think neurodiversity touches all of us, and I have come to think of that term as a hairy, squiggly caterpillar because it's very hard to define the edges and the perimeters and where someone is on it. You can't think of it as just a straight line anymore. And it's something that I want to be sensitive to because when I am interacting, I want to look for ways to improve so that I'm speaking the language that the person who's hearing speaks. And when I'm listening, I want to understand their language. So that's why I'm here. Let me see. Kepper, have you gone yet?
No, I'm Kepper Petzing. I use they pronouns. I'm at Multnomah Meeting. I'm also with the lunch program, as Gail mentioned. I'm very interested in inclusion, so that's important. I also have dyslexia. I've been part of Multnomah Meeting since 1984, and I am experiencing, which I understand is pretty common, decompensating. So, as I'm matured and entered a career, I learned a lot of ways to manage dyslexia for me. And then now with aging, I'm finding that I'm not able to manage it as well. And I understand this is common for people as they get older. And it's interesting because there's people at Multnomah Meeting who've known me for many years and they think of me in one way as far as how I function. And now I function differently. And it's kind of being hard for people to really get that. So since we all are in significantly aging meetings, I think that's something that's probably coming up for other people. Is there anybody else who hasn't gone? Tess, yes.
I'm Tess Gadwa. I am in Lincoln City. I'm vaguely affiliated with the Palouse Clearwater meeting, and I'm going to pass in the interest of time on sharing anything more.
All right. Thank you, Tess. Unnecessary, but appreciated. So I would like to read our two queries so that people might keep those in mind as our discussion develops. And then I'd like to open up the conversation to anyone who would like to start with either a response to one of those queries, a question for the group, or an experience you'd like to share relevant to this topic in our annual gathering, whether it's an observation from last year or an experience, a hope, or for our upcoming gathering in July.
Will you
All
put the
right.
queries in the chat as well?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Alrighty, the first one is what can help us to see that of God in everyone when we may not fully understand how they are moving through this world? What simple steps can we adopt to create welcoming spaces that facilitate everyone being able to work and worship together? And I invite anyone to start. You don't need to be raising your hand and calling out. And if no one chooses to do so, I will start.
One thing that grounds me in conversations and working with other people is attuning to that of God in different people rather than tuning into the differences between us. When I tune into the thing we have in common, that makes it easier for me. And then my engagement with others, I think of it a lot of times as a dance, where when you're really attuned to the movements of the other person and their energy and their presence, it's moving in step with them is easier. And when you're stepping on their toes and they're stepping on yours, it's pretty obvious pretty quickly. But that's kind of the framework I use.
Sorry, Kepper, I didn't hit submit. There they are.
We had an interesting thing happen at Multnomah meeting last month. And that was that somebody, you know, how to how to describe somebody's actions, but got very determined to take the lighting situation into their own hands, which upset some other people. And there was a moment of brouhaha, but it quickly developed into let's talk about what people need and how we address their needs. And I think that that's an issue for me. I have high sensitivity to light and sound and a lot of difficulty, getting, I don't know, there's a term, I struggle for words. But the property committee was really wonderful and jumped right into gear and has made some significant changes to the lighting. And I want to mention that to people at other meetings, that lighting can be a big issue for neurodiverse people. But also to express some real concerns about annual session because it's much more difficult to deal with lighting in the, university situations that we have. And that anything that can be done to help deal with that would be useful. So passing that on to the planning committee. So that was one thing that what happened at Multnomah meeting that I feel very good about, quicker process and how we care for one another in community.
Thank you, Kepper. Yes, lighting, sounds, temperature even. And like you asked for, someone asked for the queries in the chat rather than just hearing me speak them, they'd like to refer back to them or it's easier for them to save them for later. All of these things. And I want to also point out that in my handout, I said neurodiversity relates to all of us. We aren't just talking about others that are different from us because we are all different from one another. So neurodiversity is just the explanation that all of our brains work slightly different than each other. And that there's all kinds of things that might not even be neurodiversity. It might be ocular issues, or it might be hearing issues. We'll have a different conversation about disability later in the spring. But yeah, I do want to keep in mind that this is as it relates to all of us, that we all have these differences, larger and smaller, and some that we've heard of and some that we haven't. But yeah, it's lovely to hear that that turned around so quickly, Kepper, and that a solution was found.
This is a small thing, but it's what comes out when I read that question. I don't know much about anybody that I relate to. As far as fully understanding how someone's moving through the world, I don't think I ever do. And that makes it, if I remember that, that helps a bit because I really don't know much about anybody.
That's a really good point. And I'm thinking that someone that's experiencing difficulties that they're not comfortable with expressing to the whole community. It might be worth having a statement after silent worship about and identifying someone that you can talk to about that sort of thing if you're uncomfortable about raising it in meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, and that relates to my title for this conversation. The word unmasked is that many people with neurodiversities and disabilities often mask their issues in a way of not talking about it, or perhaps even resisting to involve themselves in an activity that they think might be difficult for them. And when they do that, we get a very limited experience of life together when someone is having to put a part of themselves behind a curtain like that, behind a mask. So I really like that idea of making a statement to all in attendance, that if there are any issues, concerns, difficulties that they think the meeting might benefit from knowing about, that there's a person. I really like that.
Let me address what was just said, and then I have something else. Which is there are people who are, let's say, more shy than usual, who might not be comfortable talking to someone like that. And there's a question of how we might be able to draw them out, putting the onus on someone to reach out to even privately to an individual, can be hard. Second thing I wanted, the thing that I wanted to talk about before that, is I wonder what we can do about, let's say, being too fidgety to sit in meeting in some sense. What can we do to address that issue? Certainly, Palouse Clearwater, we're still meeting on Zoom about half the time. And I am too fidgety for a Zoom meeting. When I am in person with other people sitting down, then they regulate me and I can sit down and be in worship.
Interesting.
That is a good point, because we have accommodations for children to be in worship. We have a corner with quiet activities where they can sit on the floor and do things. I know we have several members of our meeting that knit in worship. And some of them sit in the front rows. I tend to sit in the back row if I'm knitting, so I don't distract as much as I might if I sit in the front row. But the people that sit in the front row and knit don't bother me either. So, but yes, it's interesting. I have a child who thinks better, like in school, when they are pacing, when their body is moving, their brain works better. And they lucked out with having teachers in middle school that recognized that and said, yes, you are welcome to pace back and forth in the back of the room so you don't distract other people that are learning differently in the front of the room. And even to the extent that teacher came to me one time and they said they had a planning period. So they were just in their classroom quietly planning their own work. And they heard my child in the classroom up above clomping loudly with their big shoes back and forth. And they said, I know who that is. And they went upstairs and went, just walk a little quieter. You can keep doing it. But and I just love that the teacher said, that's what that child needs, and it doesn't disrupt the class. It doesn't interfere with anyone else's learning, and they figured it out, and it worked. But yeah, I don't know. I know we've never addressed that past having young people in the room. So that's a very good. Do you still take part in Zoom, can I ask? And do you just turn your camera off, or how do you
Sometimes,
deal with that?
sometimes I take part, and sometimes I just don't show up, or I show up, in the last 10 minutes, and then socialize afterwards.
I'm going to jump in because this pertains to my erstwhile day job before I had to leave due to disability. I live with intense pain from repetitive strain injury. My work throughout my career has been as a user experience designer, and my work has been in technology. People, I think, are under the misconception that a Zoom meeting is just the same as gathering together in a room, except, you don't have to drive and you can bring in more people, which is wonderful. The thing is that is also false. Your brain is not getting the same amount of information. It's not getting the same types of signals from a small screen as it gets being in a room surrounded by other people. Um, just think about the amount of light, the amount of sound. Think about the the awareness that you have of people when you're in the same room. Um, and so there's been a real move among most religious communities to offer more in the way of remote programming since COVID. I'm not sure that's entirely a good thing when it replaces or discourages people from showing up to actual meetings. I think it can be very valuable to augment meetings. I think it can also be very valuable as a way to share special programming. I was expecting more of a lecture format and more of a presentation format for this session, but I think the way that we're doing it is great. I'm hesitant of sharing too much because these are issues where I really have an axe to grind, and I'm afraid of monopolizing too much airtime. And I'm afraid it's like you don't show up to a meeting about where the crosswalk is going to be in your town and start talking about police violence. Or maybe you do, but it's just there is a lot that fits under the umbrella of neurodiversity. It's a very big tent. It connects to issues of stigma, it connects to issues of ableism, and it connects to issues of civil rights and health equity. But my goal, especially because I'm not a member of a friends meeting where I am, is more just to listen. But I would really share in terms of meeting people where they are, meeting and accommodating their needs. Like coming from the corporate world where Zoom meetings were very common before COVID, there is a real tendency for people involved with them to just tune out. I remember when I and my co-founders, we had spent literally months preparing a presentation and doing research around a new augmented reality app, a way to it's the specifics aren't that important, but maybe some of you who are from the 1960s would enjoy this. Basically, a way that you could take a picture of any album cover art and immediately access the song or access information, but just opening up a new kind of visual link. We finally got to make our pitch to the company that had shared this information, and the executive who was presiding, as far as I could tell, he never spoke, he never commented, and he was doing something else for the entire presentation. So I would say it's very, very common in Zoom environments to have people tuning in and tuning out. And that's just one of the ways in which they are a little bit different from real life. Okay, I hear somebody else, so I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah, I'd like to, this is Rick. I'd like to point out that many Quaker practices that we have inherited and that we routinely do, I think come from a sensitivity to the differences among us. Beginning with silence in a meeting that we can each get ourselves oriented. When someone shares, provide some time before someone else shares to consider what they've offered. We like to break out into smaller groups, worship sharing groups, which also provide an arena for careful sharing and listening. The absence of highly authoritarian, inspirational speakers who tell us what we should think. That's not a Quaker practice. I mean, the absence is a Quaker practice. So this stuff is woven into the way Quakers work, and has been for centuries. So facilitating those practices so that we don't overrun them is might be one way to answer your question. How can we make our spaces welcoming?
I I think I agree with Rick to some extent, but I also think there are some ways in which culturally we behave that lend themselves to not tolerating certain kinds of activities. And I guess the experience I want to relate is that, and I think it's very important for us to have these sessions and also to spread to our meetings education about neurodivergence. I was sitting in meeting for worship sometime last year, and all of a sudden somebody, a young man, stood up and was walking around. And it was in the middle of worship. He wasn't sharing anything. He was just walking around, and I found it distracting at first. And then I thought, but maybe he needs to walk around, because I have had some contact with these, how to welcome neurodivergence. And then I realized actually that he was who he was. I hadn't recognized him because he hadn't been to meeting in a long time, and I knew that he was on the autism spectrum. But my first impulse was, whoa, what's this guy doing walking around in meeting if he doesn't have something to do and something to share? I don't know him. I didn't know him, and I was concerned. And I think in meeting for worship, we tend to sit in silence and not move. And so it was very foreign to me to have him moving around. But, I recognized and thought after a certain point, yes, this guy needs to move around. And I was glad that he came to meeting. I mean, we don't have many older teenagers, young 20s people come to our meetings. I was just glad he was there, even if I hadn't initially realized what was going on. So I just think it's important for us to spread the word in our meetings that, people don't behave in a way that we generally behave in meetings. That doesn't, don't be alarmed. They don't need to be eldered or, that kind of thing. Anyway, my little experience of that.
I was going to relate a similar experience. This was a little bit different, but there was actually a big threshing session years ago at Multnomah meeting over whether people should nurse babies in meeting for worship.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was skin exposure, but part of it was the noise, that some people were very disturbed by the noise of suckling babies. And it led to some people leaving meeting. And I was reflecting on that because we have opposing differences. That was the thing with the lighting, that there are people like me who need less lighting. And it's important, one of the issues is overhead lighting versus non-overhead and what's the horrible lighting, the tubes versus
Fluorescence.
fluorescent lights. But there is a difference in lighting need, and I need a low light environment. And then my husband, when he got to be 80, he needed a highlight environment, that he suddenly needed a lot more light to see than he'd ever needed before. And we had to run around and add a bunch of lights to our house. And so these are, sort of opposing needs that we have to figure out. And the movement and et cetera is similar to that. People moving around the room is important for some people and problematic for other people. And I think it's just important that we talk about it. And I have appreciated at Multnomah meeting. I don't know if anybody's getting eldered or not. I hope not. But we're a large meeting. We may have 60 people there on a Sunday. And so there's pretty much always people moving around one way or another. And but we've had people before, somebody mentioned before, leading with chronic pain. We've had people before who said, look, I'm going to come to a meeting and I'm going to lay down on the floor. And I don't want that to bother anybody, but I'm not sitting in a chair, And so I think it's really important that we establish an understanding that people can do whatever in meeting, and we're going to sit and hold that. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that some people are going to have problems with it, and however we can help to manage that. If there is a better place to sit, if you don't want movement around you, or however we can help negotiate that so that both sets of people feel that we're holding them up and wanting them to be part of our community.
That brings to mind, our meeting has someone who often lies down or stretches because the chairs don't serve her body very well. We also have a practicing Buddhist that comes and sits cross-legged on the floor. But what I'm hearing, that I don't think I had ever consciously realized before, is that stating that those differences are welcome and that people's needs are that we welcome them to fill their needs. Those two people, we all know, we see them every Sunday or at least a couple of times a month, and we know that that's what they're going to do. But people coming in should know that they are also able to do what their bodies and their minds need them to do, whether that's walking back and forth. Because as, I'm looking for the name now. As Alex had said, waiting for someone to come forward and tell you puts the onus on them, which is quite often a difficult place for that person to be.
I'm going to go ahead and share an experience that I had actually in Multnomah meeting. I only went once. It was quite a large group. I think I stayed for about 15 minutes and then I left because I was in intense pain, and it wasn't bringing me into a more spiritual place. And I was worried that I was actually making my injury worse. So I took some literature with me, and I left. But I was sad to have left. I didn't want to be disturbing to any of the other people attending by getting up or stretching or sitting on the floor and sitting in a chair, because it was my first time at that meeting. I had just moved. I was investigating whether to move back to Portland or to another locality, and I wasn't familiar with the ground rules there. I think a very simple and effective way to address this question is just to have a flyer or a sign with very few words, not a lot to absorb, not paragraphs and paragraphs, just saying, we observe the practice of silence, but people may speak when they're moved by the Spirit. People may get up and move around, but just making clear like what is considered disruptive or off limits, because most people, if they're coming to an event for the first time or they're coming for with a friend, they very much want to be respectful, and they very much want to not be the squeaky wheel, literally or figuratively. But at the same time, what I'm hearing from most of the participants in this call is a real desire to make meeting spaces more open and more welcoming to people who may have different sensory needs. And I want to pass the baton back to other people. I have more to share, kind of in a similar vein, but again, I don't want to monopolize too much oxygen. So, does anyone want to respond to that? Pro, con? Has anybody have any meetings tried? Sharing lists of practices like that, seen success or not seen success? So go ahead and speak. I'm not going to call on anyone. I saw Libby raise her hand. Saw a few other people raise their hands.
Renee, why don't you go ahead?
No, we were waving to Libby because she had said in the chat that she needed to leave.
Okay.
So that was that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna continue and just share something that may be completely orthogonal to the topic here. But I guess I'll just get it off my chest. I'm not a Quaker, although I find pretty much everything about the structure and the I don't want to say the politics, but the theology, the orientation of the Quaker meetings I've participated in to be appealing. I get a lot in terms of feeling restored or relaxed out of participating in silent worship. I don't find it to be great for building community or getting to know other parishioners, or other meeting attendees. And the same with lunches and potlucks and a bit of social time. I will just say, and I may be one of the few people who feels this way, what I really gravitate to is textual analysis, whether it's a sacred text or whether it's a secular text or something in between, and towards discussion. Um, and that is I would say for meetings that are interested in bringing in more people, not just families or people in their 20s, but middle somethings like myself or Alex, just experimenting with different modalities around the core worship service and seeing what you get, seeing who signs up, whether it's potluck dinners, something like the lunch that's had at Multnomah, whether it might be a reading group, that or also working with other congregations with similar beliefs or perhaps with different beliefs, service projects. I know that because I'm on a bunch of mailing lists. I know how many projects and how much activism accompanies these traditions. So I don't want to sound like I'm preaching to the choir, or I'm sure there's a better metaphor, but if there's an interest in broadening the circle, um, because you have a wonderful and a sacred tradition of silent, unstructured worship, which now dates back about 400 years, something like that. Um, at the core, that doesn't mean that there isn't the potential to add on other types of spaces and activities that perhaps broaden the appeal, because there will be people who really want to be at that silent worship meeting every single Sunday, and then the rest is sort of optional. And then there will be people for whom a different type of activity or gathering might be more central. And maybe they'll only go to 1 out of 4 silent meetings, or 1 out of 8 or 10, but they become part of that community, and being there to the extent that they've, and like distance, childcare, economics, other obligations, just the need for sleep and restoration on the weekends for people with who may be working multiple jobs, who may have other health factors in their lives. Um, I'm just putting it out there that offering experimenting with broader programming may be might be an interesting way to broaden the base. So just a note from the peanut gallery.
Thank you, Tess. It brought to mind a lot of the different programs that we have at UFM, though I don't know, when you start a new group or you have a new activity, quite often you'll ask participants why you came today. And it's usually access to the material or learning something new. But I never thought of it as a broadening the ways we offer education about Quakers, and more learning and more discovery. I never thought of it as with a neurodivergent lens. So I really like that. I really like the possibility of asking people why they participate in certain programs with that in mind. Can I ask where you're located, Tess?
I am right now in Lincoln City, Oregon. I am preparing to move. I have a lot of medical stuff going on in my life, about four serious illnesses. It may all be long COVID. It may be PMDD. I'm missing a uterus. So a lot of my planning right now is being driven by where I can get first world medical care, because it's just, this is a wonderful, beautiful part of the world. It's very, very rural, even more rural than Moscow Pullman. But there are a lot of gaps in terms of healthcare here. So I'm in the process of just like trying to call up specialists, trying to see where I can get in. So most likely I would either be moving back to Moscow, Idaho, or to stay with my parents for some length of time in central Connecticut. One of those two.
Thank you. I hope you find what you need.
Me too.
And Verna asks in the chat, what other ideas do friends have for accommodating sensory concerns?
I started a list that I'm going to put on the table at our meeting house, with a few starter ideas, like having throws and shawls if someone gets chilly, variable seating and lighting. Someone said noise canceling headphones. I thought that was a great idea. Other ideas like that we could use.
This isn't exactly like that, but I think that it would be good for us to not automatically think it's a problem if people don't keep coming to meeting. Not everybody is programmed to want to go to meetings very often or to join something. And I think that people can get a lot out of coming once, and that's fine. I know people who feel too welcomed when they come to Quaker meetings, so they don't come back. And most of the time I hear Quakers say, why can't we welcome people better? And I'm thinking, just let them find their own path. Trust that of God in them to to lead them on the path that's right. Many of the young people I've known who've grown up in Quaker meetings sort of consider themselves Quaker, but don't go to meeting. And I think that's fine. Depending on the person. Somebody might really wish they were going, I don't know.
Part of
Totally.
I just wanted to say that in planning and conducting the annual session or the quarterlies or the monthlies, just maintaining a sensitivity to how well you've created circumstances where people can connect, either for short-term conversation or for more deep sharing or for study. One of the things I like about UFM is there is a continuous effort to pull those things together. We built up a good library. We have worship sharing groups. We have so on. So just the planners, people conducting it, just the value to me personally in associating with UFM is the connections that I build. And often those are done through pre-planned programs and events. On the other hand, I'm cheerfully cruising along at my own discovery path. And it's my path. So anyway, just good management of the life of the meeting by current council and by the others is, I think, fundamental. And just an open sensitivity to the variety of ways people come at community and spirit. That's a series of generalizations that don't mean too much, but anyway.
Thank you, Rick. Gail, you had your hand up, and I also want to make sure that people, we're reaching our hour. I want people to leave if they need to, but I can stay for another half hour if anyone wants to stay. Gail, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to say that what's coming to me is that I need to keep in mind that other people's behavior may have nothing to do with me. If someone never wants to talk to me, that may be their way in the world and have nothing to do with who I am or that I might want to speak with them. And that same is true with other kinds of behaviors we may see in meeting or in the lunch program.
Could you tell me a little bit about the lunch program that you both keep referencing so that we understand?
We offer at this point, 5 day a week free lunch, Tuesday through Saturday, for anyone who wants to walk in the door between 1 and 2.
Wow.
So,
and what sort of numbers do you get?
around 60 some.
Wow.
Yeah. And some of them are living on the street, some are or have homes, but still need to have food.
Mm-hmm.
And some come and help.
Is this something that you publicize? How do people find out about it?
The woman who really has been doing it for like 40 years. So she knows a lot of the people who come. So there's a lot of word of mouth. We do publicize it a little bit, and we put a sign out front, and some of us pass out slips of paper giving the information.
Okay. Let me know if you would ever like us to run a story about that. I still have it's very neglected, but I still have a webzine. It's called pdxlocal.net. If you're at all interested, I don't know what's the best way. I trust everyone here, so I have no problem actually sharing my email address. There's contact online here as well. But that I am fascinated by programming that works, and it's often unsung. and things that are regular and that reach large numbers of people. And you find many nonprofits have huge marketing budgets and give away a zillion tote bags, but may not be reaching as many people. So if you are at all interested, we have a very easy format for doing features. I just ask you 5 questions by email, and I ask ideally for one photo. If not, we can come up with some artwork to accompany. And this is just something I've been running for a number of years. So if you're interested, please feel free to follow up.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We're-
feel free to. Oh, there she goes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tess.
We're in a great deal of flux right now because the woman who's been doing the program is retiring.
Oh, wow.
So it remains to be seen how we will reconstitute the program.
So Tess, I am on the transition committee.
Mhm.
And yes, we are trying to get articles written. So if you could give me your contact information, I'll pass it to our committee that's working on publication.
She just put it in the chat, but I'm also happy to email it to you, Kepper, if that's easier.
And let me see if
I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Tess.
Glad to help. Very cool.
So
Impressive.
it's 11:01. I want to thank the 6 of you that are still here, as well as the 6 that needed to leave. We had 17 signed up, which was wonderful, and 12 being able to come was great. I thank you. You're welcome to leave. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to email me. My email, I sent you the materials. And is Vern still here? I sent them to you super early this morning, Vern, at like 6:30.
Yeah, I did see them. Thank you. And I will go ahead and say goodbye and offer my thanks to everyone. I got some good ideas today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. This was very educational. Cool talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Gail.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Take care. Enjoy that sunshine. We've got sunshine.
Yeah, it looks like we do.